Hey guys, before this video begins, I wanted to let you know that I'm letting you decide what the first Cloud Connection retrospective of 2022 will be. It's a three-way battle between Sonic Adventure, Jet Set Radio, and Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, and so far, Kirby 64 has maintained a steady lead. Voting is going to close on December 31st, so if you want to see either Sonic Adventure or Jet Set Radio pull ahead, then make sure to vote via the poll in the comments or in the description. Once again, voting in this comment section does not count. Please make sure to use the official straw poll link to make your voice heard. And as I've said, all three of these games are getting retrospectives at some point. This poll is just to determine what's getting the treatment first. Anyway, enough about that, let's move on to the video. There's been a Paper Mario game for every Nintendo home console alongside one handheld title since the series began on the Nintendo 64, and over its lifespan it has undergone major transformations. Beginning as a humble RPG following in the footsteps of Super Mario RPG, it then shifted back into the second dimension, attempted to stick the landing without any RPG mechanics, and then tried to inject some color back into the franchise. Depending on who you ask, these later games are either a novel attempt to experiment with the series and send it in a new direction, or an unnecessary expansion that distances the series away from what made it special. Whatever side you're on, it's clear that Nintendo and Intelligent Systems are dedicated to thinking outside the box when it comes to these games. They never settle for the same old thing with Paper Mario anymore, for better or for worse, and that's true with the latest entry as well. Released last year and receiving good reviews from critics, it sold extremely well, not only becoming one of the best-selling Nintendo Switch games of all time, but also the second best-selling Paper Mario game to date already. And to finish up this retrospective series, it's time we unwrapped it to see what's hiding inside. This is Paper Mario: The Origami King. By the time Color Splash was released in October 2016, Nintendo had already revealed that the launch date for the Nintendo Switch would be in March of the following year. 2 weeks later, the company officially announced the console, sending the gaming world spiraling and also killing whatever momentum Color Splash had left, which, considering it was a late-stage Wii U game, wasn't much. By May 2020, the Switch had sold over 55 million units, making it the perfect system for new titles and long-running franchises, and Paper Mario would be the next one up to bat. Nintendo and Shigeru Miyamoto would be more hands-off this time, essentially leaving Intelligent Systems to develop the game all on its own. WarioWare's smooth moves and DIY designer Masahiko Nagaya took the director's role this time around, leading the team down another path for the series, including another unique battle system. This system was created by producer Kensuke Tanabe and Sticker Star and Color Splash co-director Naohiko Aoyama, based on an idea that Aoyama had where enemies would attack Mario from every side. The team came up with the idea of an arena featuring multiple concentric rings separated into segments that allowed for vertical and horizontal rotation around the center of the board. While the designers still worked under the character restrictions brought on by Miyamoto, they were able to get more creative with giving outfits to the NPCs, letting them introduce different ideas for worlds and themes. The major addition to the character roster was origami figures, with the artists creating several new folded renders of classic Mario characters and species based on their artwork and sprites. Not only did it tie back to the paper theme, but it also benefited the narrative, as in the game's lore, characters are turned into origami against their will, which sets up the villainous King Ollie's scheme. Intelligent Systems would also dip back into the series' roots by bringing back partners, though its intention wasn't necessarily to return to the old partner mechanic, but more to serve the story it wanted to tell. Thus, while characters do accompany Mario during the adventure, they don't serve the same gameplay function as the first two games' partners. The game was intended to be revealed at E3 2020, but since the show was cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Nintendo instead chose to reveal the game via a trailer released online in May. It generated a lot of buzz, especially as details about the battle system and partners came out, though there was still plenty of skepticism and disappointment from those hoping for the RPG mechanics to return. In fairness, I personally noticed a more quiet response from detractors this time, as many were at least cautiously curious about the game, even if it wasn't exactly what they wanted. Kensuke Tanabe has said that he's aware of the criticisms recent Paper Mario games have received, but encouraged people to come into Origami King with an open mind, and a lot of people did. Released on July 17, 2020, the game sold over 3 million copies by the end of the year, making it the fastest selling Paper Mario game to date and the second best selling in the series behind Super Paper Mario. Reviews were generally positive and highlighted the game's battle system as an interesting new take on the combat, and from my perspective, this seems to be the modern Paper Mario game that gets the least amount of flack. Maybe that's because it's only a year and a half old right now, but considering how divisive the last two games especially are, it's all the more apparent when a Paper Mario game's praises are sung. Still, I'm jumping into this game fresh as I've only ever played the first hour or so before this video, so what do I think of this latest Papercraft journey? Let's end the Paper Mario retrospective and find out. The Origami King begins with Mario and Luigi traveling to Peach's castle to celebrate the Origami Festival, but when they arrive in the nearby Toad Town, they find it deserted. Upon entering the castle, Mario finds that Peach has been transformed into a piece of origami, acting very strange before throwing Mario into the dungeon where he finds other origami creatures named Folded Soldiers. He also meets a benevolent origami character named Olivia, who tags along with Mario after being freed. It's soon revealed that this is the work of King Ollie, Olivia's brother, who seeks to gain ultimate power by folding 1,000 origami cranes, a reference to an ancient Japanese myth. To fulfill his goal, he lifts Peach's castle out of the sky and surrounds it with giant streamers, preventing Mario and Olivia from accessing it. So it's up to the two heroes to break the streamers, reach the castle, and stop Ollie before his evil plans unfold. You know the drill by now when it comes to the overworld gameplay. You run around, jump across stuff, hammer things, etc, etc. Mario can equip a number of accessories that increase stats like health, time in battles, and guard effectiveness, which are a great help, and you can also find tools to help find secrets in the overworld via the sensor labs, which I admittedly found very pointless. There isn't much new in this department, with the only differences being in how the levels are designed, which we'll talk about in a bit. Instead, let's focus on the game's unique overworld mechanics, the confetti and the 1,000-fold arms. Confetti acts identically to the paint hammer from Color Splash, as Mario can toss this stuff out to fill in patches of the world that are missing, known as not bottomless holes. Whenever you want to fill in a hole, it's just a matter of standing near it and pressing a single button to throw the confetti out. In theory, this is more or less the paint hammer in another form, but it doesn't feel nearly as satisfying as that did for two reasons. First, instead of confidently smacking the ground or object with a hammer, you're gingerly tossing confetti in the air and waiting for it to fall down, which isn't very exciting. Second, the fact that the confetti randomly falls around where you're aiming without much precision means that there will be plenty of times where it feels like you should be able to fill a hole in with, say, 2 tosses, but you have to use 3 because some confetti misses. It doesn't waste confetti, but it feels like you have less control over this mechanic than previous ones, which is pretty disappointing. Mario's other ability, the 1,000-fold arms, manifests when you activate these special markings, turning Mario's hands into these stretchy cardboard limbs that can pull away or smash parts of the environment. You learn other abilities like this throughout the game as well that provide a different effect, though since they're only usable at designated spots, they don't provide much use beyond puzzle solving in the overworld and have more of a tactical purpose in boss battles. Speaking of, let's talk about the combat, which once again has been reinvented with a brand new style. Battles take place in a ring-shaped arena segmented into individual spaces, with Mario and his partners taking center stage. Before attacking, you're able to rearrange this battle space either by rotating rings around the center or sliding a straight line back and forth. By rearranging the field so enemies lay in a straight line or a square group, they become perfect targets for your boots and hammers respectively. The boots and hammer are finally back to being dedicated attacks after 2 games where they were controlled by stickers and cards. Your standard boots and hammers are always available, with the former attacking all enemies in one straight line, and the latter attacking a 4x4 square grid in front of you. They also have stronger forms, which break after some use, but are plentiful enough that if you don't abuse them, they'll always be at your disposal. Boss battles work a little differently, as for these, the boss takes the center spot while Mario starts on the outer rim. Spaces now contain icons that either guide Mario down the board, allow him to attack, or boost his combat potential for that turn, and now you have to rearrange the board to put Mario in the proper spot to attack. It's almost like a board game that constantly changes the layout of the arena, giving you plenty of options in how to proceed, but also challenging you to create the right layout in order to deal damage. Mario can also take advantage of the 1,000-fold arms here, as well as the Vellumental powers that he learns throughout the game, each delivering a giant elemental attack that can often turn the tide of the encounter. I've gotta say, after 3 titles in a row where the combat fell flat for me, it feels amazing to say that I'm enjoying the battles again. While it doesn't match the RPG mechanics of the first 2 games, Origami King has far and away the best modern Paper Mario battle system to date. Giving you control over the layout of the arena is an intriguing mechanic that actually puts a new spin on the battles. The act of combat is almost secondary, as your primary focus is creating a good lineup to give you a damage bonus, which you need to do quickly as you have a limited amount of time to make your adjustments. It's less about battle strategy and more about figuring out the correct sequence of events needed to get everybody in the right spot. Enemies still have resistances to your boots or hammer, and items can still switch things up, but rearranging the battlefield is the most important part. Maybe this won't appeal to everyone, and as I said, I do prefer the battles of the first 2 games, but these fights require more attention and brainpower than the previous 3 titles, and I respect it for that. Because it's more complicated, it also requires a lot more explanation than previously, and this is where Origami King goes a little overboard. Tutorials don't stop until around the 2-hour mark, and even then, the first few areas provide no challenge at all with enemy configurations. It's incredibly easy to figure out these early battles, and it's not until around the 2nd chapter where encounters become consistently engaging. Thankfully, the boss battles only receive a single explanation to acquaint you with everything, and the normal battles are fun after the game stops holding your hand. But even then, it's very easy to just kinda cheese your way through battles if you have enough coins, as you can pay to extend your timer or call on the toads watching your fights to lend a helping hand. You have to rescue these toads in the overworld first, and they'll gradually fill up your audience, who will give you a boost if you need it during a fight. These toads will usually move the ring around, do minuscule damage to enemies, or give you items, and in boss battles, they'll unlock a guide that tells you where you'll go before you move. You obviously don't have to use this system, but it strikes me as a way to justify how many coins you receive because you get a ton, so much that you'll enter the 5-digit range very quickly, and without even trying. But despite its flaws, once the fighting gets going, it becomes the most stimulating and engaging combat system in the series since the Thousand Year Door, and that counts for a lot. It was so enjoyable that unlike in Sticker Star and Color Splash, there was never a time in Origami King where I was actively avoiding battles. In fact, I probably ran away from only 1 battle this time, which is great since while that annoying random fleed chance mechanic is back here, it didn't bother me because I wasn't encountering it. Not since Thousand Year Door have I found a Paper Mario battle system to be this satisfying, and it feels so good to be able to say that. For the first time since Super Paper Mario, you'll recruit allies to help on your adventure, and for the first time since Thousand Year Door, they've all actually got a personality. Not grand personalities, mind you, but at least better than the pixels from Super Paper Mario, or hell, not having any partners at all. Unfortunately, this isn't a true return to the old partner system, as you're not really gathering a crew of allies to stop King Ollie, more just getting some temporary assistance for plot purposes. Characters don't join your party permanently, only tagging along in specific areas or until the story demands that they be sidelined. Also, most can't perform any functions outside of battles, and even in a fight, they're completely automated and only have 1 attack to use. While I'm glad that Intelligent Systems brought back partners, it does suck that they've effectively been neutered like this, and I'm ultimately left disappointed. A step in the right direction, but still not hitting the mark. But I'll at least give it credit for making them more interesting than the other NPCs, even if not all of them have any in-depth character arcs. Bobby's a perfect example of a character who's near useless in combat thanks to only being able to hit 1 enemy, and in my experience, missing too often to be worthwhile, but who's still awesome to have around. His amnesia doesn't play into the story that much, and I don't really know why it's there, but his laid-back personality makes him a fun companion. But it's the finale to his story arc that makes him so memorable, as when Olivia is trapped under a boulder, he recovers his friend's missing fuse and sacrifices himself to save Olivia's life. And he actually dies, like you literally talk to his ghost afterwards and he does not come back to life. That's something that not even the first 2 games dare to do, and the fact that they take it entirely seriously and show how it affects other characters is unexpected, and yet I absolutely love it. The other companions have significantly flatter storylines, but are more useful in combat since they can attack multiple foes with higher damage. Professor Toad's archaeology gimmick doesn't really interest me, and I kinda wish that Colorado would make a return instead. It's nice that you team up with Kamek and Bowser Jr. this time around, but Kamek's personality is so boring that it didn't really resonate with me, and as for Bowser Jr., he's got the spunk you'd expect, but he left my party before I had the chance to see him in battles, so there's that. But then there's Bowser, and man, after 2 games in a row where he was pushed back to the reduced role of antagonist, I am incredibly happy to say that he's back in full force here. It helps that Ollie's taken the lead villain spot from him, letting Bowser take on a different role that suits him better, at least in the Paper Mario series. Here, he's the same loud and lovable doofus as in the first 3 games, but with a surprising amount of competence and heart this time around, especially in how he helps Olivia deal with her conflicted feelings on facing her brother before the final battle. This is a small moment, but seeing Bowser comfort Olivia in his own way is incredibly refreshing, not to mention an awesome scene. It honestly makes me wish we had Bowser through the whole adventure, as I'd love to hear his thoughts on everything that happens, especially since there's tons of places to visit. Contrary to the last 3 games, Origami King features a large world with multiple sub-areas rather than standalone levels accessed via hub world or map screen, making progression much more continuous. It's most comparable to how the first 2 games were laid out, though not exactly like them either, as not every location is a pathway that branches off of one area like Toad Town or Rogueport. I didn't mind the map system of the last 2 games or the level groups in Super Paper Mario, but wow, it feels good to be back to this style. Not just because I find it more invigorating as a setting for a large game, but also because it allows for more spacious and interesting level design. A design philosophy for when you're creating individual areas that aren't connected is feeling the need to cram everything in smaller spaces since everything has to be contained in its own separate spot. You don't have that restriction with large open levels like this, and having more room to run around in again is super refreshing. Granted, some levels are too big for their own good, with too much empty space, and while that's a problem, the areas are still fun to travel through. But as before, it's not just the world's design that makes the bulk of the journey, but also the stories you experience and the characters you meet. Like Color Splash, chapters of the game aren't explicitly labeled, every significant area is instead tied to the colored streamer you're following. The way the narrative unfolds kinda bounces all over the place, with some areas having little to no plot, some being a self-contained storyline, and some containing a bunch of story beats tied together by connected levels. It makes the adventure feel a little more slapdash than previous ones, but that's a minor issue for me as I look at these sections individually anyways. Speaking of, let's take a deeper dive into Origami King's sections. The prologue carries on for a while this time, as you don't start following any streamers or go anywhere beyond Toad Town for the first 2 hours. Predictably, you learn about the battle system and wait for the story to begin as you learn about what happened and where you need to go first. I already mentioned how the tutorials last forever, but it's also frustrating how the game drags its heels right out of the gate, beginning with what might as well be a brick wall. You are doing things here, but in terms of actually moving the story along, the game just kinda revs its engines for a while. A slow start for sure. Chapter 1 sees you following the red streamer, heading through a pleasant little valley before reaching a tower at the top of Overlook Mountain. These areas are pretty okay, but they're just kind of standard levels with no real pizzazz to them, nothing that makes them stand out from any other Mario Grassland area. There's very few interesting set pieces here except for possibly the tower, and even then it's not a very memorable part of the game, with just a few sections like chasing the rats out of the kitchen sticking out in my mind. That thankfully isn't true for the second chapter, where Mario and Olivia follow the blue streamer up to Autumn Mountain and meet the amnesiac Bobby, who accompanies them to Shogun Studios, a theme park where folded soldiers have taken over. These first few areas look absolutely fantastic, especially Autumn Mountain, which is one of my favorite levels. Everything about it, from the music and environments, are beautiful. Shogun Studios takes up the bulk of this section, and it's an awesome level thematically, but it's also just a bit too large and tedious to travel through for its own good, though the theater section at the end is wonderful. After an interlude where Bobby retrieves his lost fuse and sacrifices himself, Mario and Olivia head after the yellow streamer for the game's third chapter, which takes them into the scorching sandpaper desert. This sprawling wasteland is missing its sun, allowing Sniffets to take over the town of Shroom City, and Mario, alongside the archaeologist Professor Toad, must solve the mysteries of the desert to bring back the sun and make the Shroom Temple rise once again. The desert is a humongous map compared to every other level, but thanks to your boot car, it isn't too cumbersome to navigate. As you might expect from a Nintendo desert area, there's a ton of puzzles you need to solve, which makes this section very engaging. Although on the nitpicky side, I do vastly prefer the color scheme of the desert at night than when the sun comes back, mostly because these shades of yellow and orange just get on my nerves. Mario and the gang set out onto the water for the 4th chapter as the purple streamer extends far across the Great Sea, and this part is fantastic. I don't know what it is about sailing across the vast ocean, discovering uncharted islands, and looking for sunken treasure that appeals to me as someone who never played games like Wind Waker or Subnautica, but even Origami King's basic approach to it really sucked me in. Too bad the second half drags on forever, especially the Ice Elemental Temple, which is too repetitive with its puzzles to be any fun, and while the sea tower that wraps this section up is cool, it does overstay its welcome. Chapter 5 sends Mario into the clouds to follow the final green streamer to the Paradise Resort Shangri Spa, and gotta say I love that name, which is in disarray after Bowser's Flying Castle crash-landed into it. Finding Kamek and Bowser Jr. at the spa, Mario and Olivia eventually storm Bowser's castle in order to defeat the folded soldiers within. This is a solid chapter that has a really nice flow to it until you start the journey into Bowser's castle where there's just too many mini-bosses, which, while enjoyable, are giant roadblocks to the pacing. Once all the streamers have been destroyed, Mario, Olivia, and Bowser bring the fight to Ollie, who's taken residence in Peach's castle. After taking to the skies with Bowser's airship, the crew arrive at the castle just in time for Ollie to transform it into the Origami Castle, an awesome piece of architecture that unfortunately is kinda bland on the inside. Visuals aside, I do really like this finale, one of my favorite parts of the game as it absolutely nails the build up to the conclusion in a way that the other Paper Mario games haven't really done. It's a great capstone to an adventure that has its rough spots, but on the whole delivers a satisfying and exciting trip to the game's world with a number of entertaining locations to visit and people to meet. It helps that the game looks absolutely gorgeous, rivaling and sometimes beating Color Splash in the graphics department. It doesn't look that different from that game, with vibrant and beautiful colors, though some areas look better than others in this regard. The lighting especially caught my eye. The way the environment and lighting artists play with light and shadow here makes for some absolutely wonderful polish on areas that already look great. Paper Mario has always relied on simple, charming aesthetics, but the extra level of detail in rendering these areas is definitely appreciated. I mentioned how intelligent systems created unique outfits for NPCs, and while that doesn't eliminate the problem of every character being a Toad, it is at least a start towards getting the NPC design back to its original form. The majority are still your standard Toads, but for example, take the accessory salespeople. They all have a backpack, so no matter where they are, one look is enough for you to know that they've got accessories to sell. Minor things like that, in addition to location and animation, are critical in helping to differentiate between an unimportant citizen and a merchant, and it's great to see Origami King gets this right. The origami itself is also great. I absolutely loved seeing these familiar Mario enemies twisted into new and unique forms. Masahiko Nagaya noted how when the artists created origami mockups, they captured the same charm of the designs while also introducing an eerie, uncanny element, and that comes across in the in-game models. Every enemy is clearly identifiable, but if you look at them side by side, something about the simplified geometry and creases makes the folded soldiers look just a bit more intimidating and off-putting. This is undoubtedly the best papercraft aesthetic that's been in the series so far, because it manages to both be cute and elegant at the same time. Origami is, after all, an ancient art form with mythology surrounding it that this game acknowledges and pays homage to, a stark comparison to the childish theme of stickers or the chaotic mess of throwing paint around. But not every aesthetic choice works for me, as while the origami is a lovely addition, I'm not at all a fan of the use of arts and crafts objects as bosses. It strikes me as being quirky for the sake of being quirky, especially since they can all talk but have no distinguishable facial features to sell it. Just looking at the fights, it is fun to battle these guys as they are good encounters, but from a character design standpoint, it's pretty lame. Now, if these were actual enemies, like Goombas, Koopas, etc. that wielded these objects, that would be awesome, not to mention more organic. Instead, what we have is a group of characters that leave absolutely no impact and feel like such a wasted opportunity. But back on the positive side of things, let's talk about the soundtrack, which has a bunch of great tunes. Codenamed Steam audio director Yoshito Sekigawa led the team of composers consisting of Color Splash sound director Sho Murakami, WarioWare Gold composer Yoshiaki Kimura, Fire Emblem music director Hiroki Morishita, and Color Splash composer Fumihiro Isobe. With so many musicians taking the reins this time, the soundtrack goes in many different directions like Thousand Year Door and Super Paper Mario, but with more emphasis on real instrument sounds this time. So many of these songs provide an amazing accompaniment to the area they're attached to, and when you're in the moment, it's a fantastic listen. Now we come to the battle theme, which I said in my Paper Mario video was on the verge of overtaking that game's theme as my favorite in the series. But does it get to claim that title? Well, yes and no. Just examining the composition alone, this is hands down the best theme. It's such a lively and upbeat song with the perfect blend of funk and jazz to get you pumped up for a battle. The problem is that while the song is amazing, how it's integrated into the game kinda ruined it. Each area has its own rendition of the theme that only plays when you're in that zone, changing the instruments and tone accordingly, and while it's thematically appropriate, it dampens the experience for me. I'm typically not a fan of area-specific battle themes in general because it makes it less likely for those unique versions to stick in my head, and I'm sad to say that this holds true for Origami King as well. Not that the different versions of this theme are bad, it's really just my personal preference getting in the way here. But man, let's talk about the storytelling, because while I already knew I was probably going to enjoy Origami King's combat, I was not expecting to like the narrative as much as I did. The stories have never really been the draw for me with these games, but it's always nice when the writers deliver on this front. Generally, it still maintains that comedic tone that the last two games delivered, though a lot less in your face with the humor this time. The jokes are softer overall, less on going for the big laughs and references, and more on just having a relaxed, not too serious atmosphere. I like that shift towards a more subdued comedic style, and while there's the odd line that made me groan, Origami King doesn't feel like it's trying too hard to be funny most of the time. And the toned-down comedy makes it all the more impactful when the game goes for the more serious moments, as they don't feel out of place. It would have been easy for Taro Kudo to just rely on joke after joke as he's done previously and try to make every moment as bombastically funny as possible, but Origami King is more straight-laced than that. It's still pretty lighthearted for most of the journey, but there's plenty of times where the game goes in a darker or deeper direction, and shockingly, these instances worked really well for me. I already mentioned Bobby's sacrifice, which is such a good scene because there's never a point where it's treated for laughs. It's given the proper weight and is portrayed in a sober, reverent way. It isn't necessarily a surprising twist, but it's legitimately heartbreaking to watch it unfold, especially with what happens afterwards. Bobby sacrifices himself to save Olivia, and when she realizes this, she hides herself away because of her guilt and refuses to continue on the journey until you cheer her up, which is gut-wrenching. I knew Bobby was going to die and expected that Olivia would note his sacrifice, but seeing her run away in despair and wallow in her emotions, then having to talk to Bobby's spirit and get her to laugh again, even if I knew the event would happen, the aftermath was poignant. This is the same kind of emotional storytelling that Super Paper Mario laid out, and if you recall, I absolutely loved that game's story. Origami King's isn't as complex, but it still succeeds at pulling on the heartstrings in addition to being fun, and that's really all you need. Olivia herself is the crux of a lot of these story moments, which is to be expected as she's Mario's mouthpiece for this game. She has more of a personal stake than either Kirsty or Huey did, especially because her brother is the one responsible for what's happening. Olivia is a very naive, wide-eyed character most of the time, but she understands the gravity of what Ollie is doing and why he must be stopped. But she is acting against her only family, and more than that, against the being that created her as well, crafting a conflict that preys on her feelings of hopelessness and innocence. And I fell in love with that. Olivia is now one of my favorite partners in the whole series because I cared about seeing her evolve over the course of the story and wanted to see her come to terms with what she's dealing with. I think it's her final moment after defeating King Ali that really sealed the deal for me and made me realize just how special she truly is. When Ollie's in his last moments, he apologizes to Olivia for going mad with power as he misread the intentions of his creator, the origami craftsman, and believed he needed to destroy all non-origami entities. He had 999 cranes folded, but allows himself to become the final one so Olivia can undo all the origami that he created, including Olivia herself. Kirsty and Huey both had moments at the end of the story where they allowed themselves to be sacrificed so Mario can win the day, but Kirsty's death is ultimately undone and Huey's ascension didn't have the proper impact. Olivia's sacrifice comes right after she loses her brother, and it makes sense why she'd have that impulse, to prevent him from causing any more harm in a way that eliminates the chance that the origami will ever rise again. I don't want to make it sound like Olivia is the most complex character ever, or even the best written, but I connected with her in a way that I haven't been able to do for just about every single character in this series since Super Paper Mario, and I loved seeing her overcome her fears and anxieties. Well, I'm happy to say that Origami King was a very pleasant surprise and the first Paper Mario game in a long time that I consider to be good. Dare I say it, almost on par with the original game. For different reasons, mind you. Origami King might not be a good sequel if you're directly comparing it to the N64 game, but it's a fun, engaging, and often dramatically wonderful title that absolutely deserves your attention. Its battle system is an intriguing mix of strategy and puzzle solving that's a breath of fresh air, it looks absolutely gorgeous, and it has a shockingly enjoyable and thoughtful narrative. You may have noticed that constantly throughout this video, I highlighted elements of Origami King that haven't been seen in the series for a couple of games, and that's what I think makes this game work so well. Despite some aspects of Sticker Star and Color Splash appealing to me, I found that the series was heading down a stifling, limiting path with these games that needed to be course corrected. Origami King scrubs away many of the problems that plagued those two titles while still leaving plenty of room for intelligent systems to continue to innovate, and it's great to see all that fat trimmed away. It isn't the return to form that many hardcore Paper Mario fans have been hoping for, but it is at least a well-made adventure that has some weird design choices, but on the whole is something I'm glad to have sat through. As for the series itself, I have to say, this has been one of the more interesting projects I've ever done for this channel. Paper Mario is a roller coaster of a series, going through so many twists and turns and suffering from tonal and mechanical whiplash, and it's not until I played them back to back until I really saw how big these jumps were. But what I found most interesting is how there's at least something from each of these games that I appreciate. Paper Mario's cozy atmosphere, Thousand Year Door's refined battle system, Super Paper Mario's story, Sticker Star's soundtrack, Color Splash's relaxed vibe, Origami King's puzzle fighting and emotional character arcs. Every title shone in some way for me, even if the rest of it was murky. But if Origami King has proven anything, it's that the series has the potential to produce quality titles even without just making another RPG. Do I want to see another game like the first two? Absolutely. But if it's going to come at the expense of disregarding the good qualities of these later titles, then that would be a wasted opportunity. Kensuke Tanabe isn't sure if the series will continue to stray away from the RPG formula of the early games, but he knows that he wants the series to, at the very least, be innovative and unique. Whenever the next Paper Mario game gets announced, I'm likely going to be excited for it, but also go in with a level of skepticism and caution. I don't want to judge future entries in the series based on what I desire from it, but I also want to set my expectations appropriately. Paper Mario may have lost some of the magic of the older titles, but I'm confident that Nintendo and Intelligent Systems have the power to bring that magic back even if it's in a different form. And at the very least, the next game should be interesting, and hopefully won't be immediately dismissed if it doesn't match what some fans want. You can never quite judge a book by its cover after all, and in this case, you also can't judge the paper within until you read it for yourself. Hey, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, leave a comment, and make sure to subscribe to see more Cloud Connection videos. Remember, if you want to vote on the first retrospective of 2022, then check out the link in the comments or the description. Thanks for watching!